really happy that all of you are joining us today for that. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're first going to land at the landing page for Go Bowtie. And Monica and Stefan, thanks. It looks beautiful. But please, if you haven't seen the page yet, Monica will add a link to the chat just now. But it's really looking good. Why do you want to use Bowtie? Is to analyze the risks. And with this tool, you can really look at the risk of any size in any industry. It's easy to use, and I'm going to show you a bit of that just now. There's some of the features which I'm going to demonstrate just now. And yeah, if there's anyone that needs some facilitation, they can actually contact us for, and this team will be able to assist. So without much further ado, I'm going to log into my account here, and then let's create a bowtie. So while this is opening, I'm going to use the work that we've done at ACI with this people transportation risk analysis as an example to create a bowtie. And when you arrive at bowtie, this is the screen that greets you. And it's really very easy to create your first bowtie. So you can either click on that block there, create a bowtie, or you can click at the bottom block here to add a new bowtie. And so I'm going to do that. And let's say this is our demo bowtie. And we are creating this bowtie. Right, it takes you into the bowtie board view immediately, and you'll see it also opens up a side panel on this side where there's different categories of things that you can add in here. But the very first step is to just say either, well, what's the bowtie name? We already did that. You can add the hazard and the unwanted event. Now, for those of you that's a bit unfamiliar with bowtie methodology, the bowtie methodology really starts by understanding the hazard that you're dealing with if you're in operational risk management. And so in this case, I'm going to start with defining the hazard as a moving vehicle that I travel in. Right, so that's the hazard that I'm going to explore. And the unwanted event is really the moment in time when I lose control over that vehicle. So loss of control of vehicle is the name of my unwanted event. Now, in this case, I can go and have a look at the unwanted event here in the side panel. I can add a little bit more of the description. So this is a light passenger vehicle. For instance, I can say, well, the hazard is actually employee traveling while on duty. That's and maybe the size of the hazard might be traveling at the speed greater than 60 kilometers per hour while on duty. So there's my hazard description. I have my unwanted event, and you can add some more information here about the bowtie specifically, in what area it's applicable, the approval status of it, so it's not yet approved, and then some other attributes such as the bowtie owner. So maybe Paul Schwartz is the owner here. This is our company bowtie. This is for excellence, etc. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but you get the gist of it. And then you can also add some tags here. So I'm going to just open it here. This is a very nice feature for tagging certain of your bow ties or even individual controls. So maybe I want to tag and say, well, this is my travel risk category. And there might be some other bow ties also related to my travel risk category or whatever the case might be. So there's the functionality to add some tags. All right, so having done that, now I want to start exploring my bow tie. And I'm first going to add some consequences. So what happens if I lose control over this vehicle? The one that people normally get right is a possible consequence is some injuries to driver or passengers or pedestrians, right? Okay. And I see I misspelled that. You can fix it very easily like that. And you can also say, well, what is the possible or the possible severity of this consequence that I'm defining here? And you can say, well, it's high because injuries can even be fatalities. So it's a high severity, and you can see that color gets red right there. Now I want to add another consequence, and let's say another consequence is some um, damage to my vehicle or other infrastructure. Right, fix that. Right, and maybe this is a medium severity just for the sake of it. All right. A very, very nice feature of our bowtie board is actually the ability to drag and drop. So I can say, no, I want my infrastructure or my damage consequence on top and then the injuries. But you can drag and drop whatever you put on your board, which is very, very useful, especially while building your bowtie. Okay, so if that is some of the consequences, let's move to the causes. So what can cause the hazard of the moving vehicle that I travel in to go into a loss of control situation, which can lead to injury? So some of these causes might be some poor road conditions, which I want to say the probability on some of the roads that we are traveling is probably high, that we have a potential cause like this. Also, we might have some adverse weather conditions, and the probability of that is, let's say, medium. That's a potential cause. And let's add another one here. Let's say equipment malfunction. So maybe there's a tire blowout or there's something that goes wrong with your vehicle, and hopefully that's a lower probability cause that will happen. Right, so now you can start seeing that we are going to start seeing the shape of the bow tie taking shape. So normally, and maybe I must just say it at this point, there's a lot of information that goes into a bow tie analysis like this, and I'm going about it quite quickly, but normally it will be a team of specialists that sit down together and work through a specific risk scenario and analyze the risk by doing this bow tie analysis. And the whole objective of doing this is then to understand the where the vulnerabilities in the risk management approach. In other words, where are we weak on the controls that needs to keep us safe from losing control and the eventual consequences of this risk. All right, so let's add a few controls into this bow tie so that we can see what this looks like. And we're going to start on the preventive side. So preventive controls on this, on the left-hand side of the unwanted event. And let's add the first control here. And we say, for poor road conditions, we want to see a journey management plan to be adhered to. All right. And I can add another one, poor road conditions, surely ABS and stability control mechanisms of my vehicle will kick in to help me navigate the road if there's poor road conditions. Also, I probably need to select the select correct fit for purpose vehicle. Right, so there's three possible controls to help us manage the scenario of having poor road conditions. So to help me not lose control over the vehicle, I must plan my journey, I must adhere to it, I must have the ABS and stability control functionality in my vehicle, and then I also need to make sure that I have the correct vehicle. So if I'm traveling on dirt roads, select a proper vehicle for that purpose. All right, now I want to show you some functionality in terms of a control. So you saw immediately there popped up a little colored block in the corner there, and it correlates with the functionality here that the criticality of a control, the operating effectiveness of a control, and the design effectiveness of a control can be auto-calculated based on what you specified up front. So in this case, the criticality is calculated at 40% at the moment because we haven't given it any other information yet. So let's go through a few of those examples. So the journey management plan to be adhered to is probably an act because it's not the object, it's not the engineering object, it's a very human thing to be doing. So let's say it's an act. It's administrative of in the control hierarchy. So to have a plan and to adhere to that, it's really administrative, and this is probably a specific control depending on what the company requirements are. And now let's say has this controlled. So now you can see things start changing here. The design effectiveness is only at the 33%, and I'll show it to you just now. How did we get to that? So has this controlled failed recently? Let's say yes, it has, because people are lazy to complete the paperwork for journey management planning. Is this control being audited? No, we're not auditing it. Is it being monitored and reported? And let's say yes, it's being monitored and reported, and then you'll see there the operating effectiveness now gets an orange color because we answered some of the questions that's related to operating effectiveness. So you can see here the questions that we answered here is related to design effectiveness, operating effectiveness. And then there was some automated control criteria that was used to determine the criticality of that control. And that is how it is set up. And I will show you in the settings just now how that came about. All right. So a nice feature that I do want to show you here is that even though there's a preset calculation, there's still the functionality to override that and say, well, no, guys, from from an operating effectiveness point of view, we know that this is not effective, and I'm going to manually override it. There's user discretion applied, and I'm telling you that this control is actually not operating effectively at the moment. So there's a very nice functionality to add user discretion to any one of these, and then also to add tags to it. So maybe this is an improve opportunity, or whatever you want to tag it as. All right. So I'm not going to go through all the lots of details on the rest, but I do want to quickly just show you if things change. So on the ABS side, this is a object, and it is engineering with human engineer. Well, Alicia, I think we will make it without human intervention at the moment, because I think there's some cars that have stability control without human intervention. And let's say this control has not failed recently. It is not being audited, but we are monitoring it through our maintenance plans, etc. So I'm going to leave this thread line for the moment, and I just quickly want to show you what it looks like if we now start adding some controls to the rest as well. So for adverse weather conditions, our ABS and stability control is definitely also something that control that will help us there. And there's the functionality to have to copy a control, so you can actually copy it. There's my copy of the ABS and stability control. Now I can drag and drop it into the thread line that I'm looking for. And now I can edit that. I don't want this word copy off, so I'm going to just take that out. It's ABS and stability control. And now you can see that this criticality actually jumped up from 40% to 60% because this control is now featured on more than one thread line. So that's one of the automated rules that we set up. So you will see that come up as well. All right. Then equipment malfunction. Let's maybe just add another control here in terms of maintenance plan adherence as an example. So that adherence to the maintenance plan is really critical for us to make sure that the vehicle that we are driving with is in good condition. So I'm going to make that a manual discretion. Right. So on the other side, we have corrective controls. So corrective controls are the controls that we have that we deploy or implement to make sure that once the vehicle has we lose control over that vehicle. In other words, once control is lost, then the corrective control is actually helping to reduce the severity of the possible consequence. All right. So on this side, we definitely want to make sure that there is emergency response in place with emergency information available. So that's a control that helps me to to react quickly and to get the emergency response quickly to injured drivers or passengers. Something like airbags on in the car will help to reduce injuries, and also actually the fit for purpose vehicle. So I'm going to copy that control and I'm going to move it over to that side. drag and drop it there. So the type of vehicle that I'm driving with is actually also something that will help regain control over the vehicle and reduce the possibility or probability of injury. So in terms of the order of how this will happen, it will probably rather be that one first that needs to bring the vehicle back into control, and then if we don't get control back over the vehicle, the airbags will deploy, and if there's still a crash, there's emergency response deployed to handle the injuries and make sure that there's no fatalities. So there's a storyline happening here in terms of the controls. I cannot see any hands in the audience at the moment, but I'm continuing, so I'll get to some of the important things just now. I'm going to make this control very critical, and I'm not going to worry too much about the control attributes for now, because I will show you some of those changes just now. And then maybe the damage to my vehicle or other infrastructure have no control. So maybe we want to say, well, I don't know of any controls, but typically you want to actually have something like your stability control also there, or you want to at least have insurance to make sure that your vehicle, that the financial loss in terms of the damage is not too severe. All right, so let's stop at this point with our bow tie, and what you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm actually clicking on the bow tie board, and I'm holding in my mouse and I'm moving around this bow tie. I can use my mouse ball to make it smaller, make it bigger. Very useful when you're working with a large bow tie. Also, a very, very useful feature here is the view settings. So here I can say, show me all the detail or show me only the overview. So you can see here the overview takes away all the little details in this bow tie and only shows you almost a clean cut version of it. You can clear it there. Let's see what it looks like if I highlight some controls. So let's highlight for criticality. So what you can see here is that the color of the criticality indication here is then the color that it's highlighted for the control, which is a very nice visual tool to actually show you where are my critical controls. So by one view, you can actually see what's going on your board. Also, you can highlight it for the rest as well. Highlight for operating effectiveness, highlight for design effectiveness. So here's the example of design effectiveness, and I can see the white ones. I haven't defined the design effectiveness yet, but I did define the design effectiveness of those three controls there. A similar type of functionality, but with filtering. So on filtering, you can filter for criticality. So only show me the critical controls, and maybe let's highlight also for critical controls. So let's do it like that. So now I see only my critical controls on this bow tie. So you can play around with the view and filter settings here on top, which is a really nice feature when you are managing this process of analysis, but also for a manager or a risk owner of this specific risk to make sure that he understands all the controls that is applicable. All right. On top here, we have a few other things. We have a dashboard for this bow tie specifically, explaining the design effectiveness, operating effectiveness. Now, for a small bow tie like this, it looks quite simple, the dashboard. But when you start having lots of controls on this bow tie, it's really useful to get a view of the design effectiveness of all your critical controls summarized, and the operating effectiveness of your critical controls and more that's on this dashboard. And then a view in summary of all your controls. So there's a summary of all the controls. You can actually group them together and say, show me all the critical controls grouped together, all the normal controls, or show me rather the grouping per design effectiveness or the grouping per operating effectiveness. So there's some good functionality here, which helps with the overview of your controls. Then a summary view of your criticality. So in terms of the criticality details, and this is the place where you can now go and interrogate your scoring in terms of the calculation in the background for criticality, design effectiveness, or operating effectiveness. So let's look at criticality, and you will see that the score for this one that we put as management discretion is actually only 2 out of 5. And that 2 out of 5, the details of that is sitting in this table here. Is the control a preventive control got 1 point, and the control is the only control on a threat line or consequence line is a 1 point. So that makes up the 2 out of 5 that you can see there. Now, where do you set this? And I said I will get to the settings page just now. So for that, I'm going to jump to the settings pages to show you. And let me go out of this bowtie for now, and I'm going to the home page, and from here I can go to the settings. So in the settings pages, there's a page where you can modify the definition or the terminology that we're using. There's the attributes, so there's bowtie attributes, there's control attributes, and there's threat and consequence attributes. Now, some of them are automatically calculated, and some of them are defined specifically, and you can actually change those. So let me show you. Let me take one like this. So it's currently it has a drop-down list stating standard or specific. So maybe we don't want to have those two options, and maybe we rather would like to say it is a optional control or a mandatory control. Maybe in our company, that is what we're working with. So here you can actually show or make the changes regarding the attributes. You can also add another attribute here. All right, so let's add an attribute, Alicia, and the attribute that I want to add is, will management stop operations if the control is not in place? All right, that's the attribute that I want to add, and the drop-down list, I'm going to say yes or no, and that is the two options that I have here. All right, so that's a new attribute that we defined for the control attribute. So now, how do we link the attributes with its criticality, effectiveness, design, and operating effectiveness? So at the moment, the automated criteria that's used for the criticality calculation are these, and you can click on each one of these and you can see what is the weighting that's given to this specific attribute. So the control appears on multiple threat lines or multiple consequence lines. It gets a 1 if it's true. So I can change that. I can say, no, give me a weighting of 2 and save you can see I actually changed this attribute here, right? I also want to take one of these away. I want to say the control is a preventive control. To me, is not really a attribute that I want to add in here, and I want to delete that criteria. And then lastly, I want to add this new criteria or attribute that I added just now. Will management stop operations if the control is not in place? I haven't given it a weight yet. So if yes, then it is very critical. So I'm going to give it a weight of 3. All right, so now you can see my max score now is 8. And this is 100% aligned now with our company policy of how we define criticality. And I can go back to my bow tie now, and I want to go back to my controls page, and I want to show you in terms of the criticality. This picture has now changed. So you can now see the will management stop operations if this control is not in place is now a question, but there's nothing in there yet because we haven't actually defined the answers. So let's say ABS and stability control is definitely something that manage will stop the driving of if that is not in place. So you can see immediately that by giving that a yes answer, its criticality now went up to 75%. So it's actually 6 out of 8. All right. And so forth. I can do the rest as well. Let me just yeah, I think that's good enough for now. But I still don't see it as critical, and that's just a last functionality I want to show you guys on criticality. You can actually define the level at which critical is defined at, and let's say 70% is where we want the auto calculation to be indicating as critical. And if I now go back, you will see quite a number of them are now marked as critical. And let's see, and there you go. So even so those two ABS stability controls, that's at 75%, 6 out of 8, are now marked as critical. You can go through exactly the same process on design effectiveness, operating effectiveness, define it, what your company requires the definition to be for the calculation or the attributes, and get your control analysis correct from that point of view. Because a big portion of your bow tie analysis is about understanding your control environment and analyzing the strengths and the vulnerabilities of your control environment. So that is a basic rundown of your bow tie, of our bow tie tool. There's some more functionalities here that I haven't shown you. You can share a bow tie with someone. I'm going to share this bow tie with myself. Excellence, solutions. Right, I can share it with myself. I can also mark it as a favorite. So when I go to my favorites, this specific bow tie will be there. I haven't set anything as a template, but I can also mark this bow tie as a template bow tie. And what will happen now is if I create a new bow tie and I want to do a similar type of bow tie, I can create it based on a template, and I can actually choose that bow tie, and I will say this is it. This is my second bow tie. And maybe this is a bow tie for a very specific scenario of transportation that I want to use that one as a base and now start changing the things that I want to change. So the templates, the favorites, the shared, and finally I can also archive a bow tie. Let's archive it, and it's sitting in my archive from where I can delete my bow ties. All right, so that's a very quick overview. You can get the overview of all your bow ties here, the dashboard of all your controls and bow ties, and also lastly some actions related to the bow ties. Now I haven't defined any actions yet, so I'm going to go out of that screen for now. When you go into a bow tie and there are specific actions for improvement that you want to define, you can do it here and you can add it as such. All right. So colleagues, thank you very much. That's my time for today. But thank you for joining me in this session, and I'm really excited about the potential that this tool has to make the life of risk analysis, risk management easier, and to actually help us to understand our risks better. Thank you very much.